right, welcome to the second part of factoring. Today we're going to look at the discriminant for part of the lesson here, and that is referring to the value underneath the root sign in the quadratic formula, which you've done in previous math. And you should know that that information is going to tell you some information about your factors. If the answer that you get when you do the discriminant of the b squared minus 4a is a perfect square, we're going to be able to factor it over the rational numbers. You're going to get answers that are fractions or whole numbers. If you get an answer that's not a perfect square, that means you can't square root it, but it's still positive. Therefore, you're probably going to get an irrational number, which means a root, and so it's factorable, but only over the real numbers. And then the third situation is the one where we get into imaginary numbers, which we're not going to deal with in this class. So if we look at some specific examples, how do you deal with a question like this? Well, you would need to find the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, where 45 is your a value, 14 is your b, and 187, negative 187, is your c value. And you'd plug it in and you'd compare it to that chart that you just saw up there and determine, well, what is the possibilities, what kind of answers could we get? You're also going to have to be able to remind yourself how to factor using SOAP, and that involves the cube root of values. So if I ask myself what's being cubed to get me 125x cubed, it's 5x. And what's being cubed to get me 27? Well, that's 3. And so therefore, that is essentially your a value in this formula. Wherever there's an a, you're going to replace it. And there's your b value right there. And you just plug them in, and you just got to remember the SOAP rule to get your sign. Same sign, opposite sign, and then always positive. So you can also do this with regards to irrational numbers. So question 3 here is over the irrational numbers. What's being cubed to get me 6? Well, that would be a is being cubed plus the cube root of 6 cubed would get me 6. So when I use my rule, I get a plus root 6. So same sign, square the first one, opposite sign, multiply them together, plus square root of 6, or the cube, sorry, these should be cube roots. The cube root of 6 squared, which would be the cube root of 36. And that would be your answer over the real numbers. So a skill that you have, you just maybe haven't used it like that before. There's also a pattern with differences of powers, not sums, but differences, meaning that if there's a minus sign in between. And I'm just going to write down the next one, see if you can see what the pattern would be. As I write it down, just think to yourself, what is happening to the exponent of the a's and the b's as we go from left to right? And hopefully you're seeing that your first factor is always going to be the same, a minus b. And then your next term will be whatever is first to one less power than it was originally. And most of your questions will be like number 4 here, where you have just an x and a 1. And so when I want to factor that, the first term will be x minus 1, and then x to the 6th times 1 to the power 0. And then you have plus x to the power 5 times plus 1 to the power 4. All these 1s will just be equal to 1, so I'm not going to bother writing them down. 1 to any power is just going to be itself. And that's going to be your answer. So you're going to need some practice at that, and you'll see it in your assignment today. You also have to review your factor theorem. So when I looked at this question, 2x to the power 4, I'm assuming that there's going to be 4 factors in the answer because of the degree as being 4. Maybe, well, maybe there won't. And I'm assuming also that I'm going to have a 2x and x and x and x to get me 2x to the power 4. The question is, well, what are they going to be? And if you remember, the factor theorem says that if you take a factor, and let's just try 1, do you get 0? If you do, then x minus 1 is a factor. So if I put 1 in, that'll be 2. Take away 1 is 1. 1 minus 15 is minus 14. That's not going to get me 0, so then I would try minus 1. Do I get 0? And if that doesn't work, try 2. And when I get that, I'm then going to use long division or synthetic division to get the answer. So you might need some help with that when you get to it, and we can review that. There's also some other questions here that we're going to deal with, but we're going to do these together because they involve skills that you have but that you haven't done yet. So at the beginning of class, the next time we get together, we will do these together and maybe address some of the questions that you might have. Otherwise, that's it. That's your less than further state.